Shalom, brothers and sisters. Shalom, brothers and sisters. Giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the Creator and the Maker of heaven and earth. This is part 2 to what we did last week, called the quote-unquote black Israelite. Speaks on the Jewish man. As before, we're going to deal with linguistics, we're going to deal with history, we're going to deal with citations. All right? Just want this to be noted, brothers and sisters, for edification purposes. Giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the Creator and the Maker of heaven and earth. Shalom. Many records speak of the Habiru. The Habiru were the Hebrews. The Egyptians of the 18th dynasty spoke of this, both Thutmose the third and Akhenaten. The time when the Israelites were in the wilderness, we see they had standards among their tribes. Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Ephraim, Benjamin, Manasseh, Gad, Simeon, Reuben, Dan, Naphtali, and Asher. The matter of the Habiru and the Israelites. Let's go, part 2. Now, why does this become important is because in discussing the Habiru, the ancient Israelites were part of the Habiru in part. Now, as pointed out in my book, Egypt Talk and Writing, the Exodus occurred before the era of Dynasty 18. So the fact, brothers and sisters, that Thutmose III, as well as Akhenaten spoke of the Habiru, shows that the Habiru, aka Apiru, were not only the Israelites, but included the Israelites. So that's what we want to point out for edification purposes. Next slide. The division of the tribes. If you remember in part 1, we were saying that the word Yehudi does not mean Jew, but rather Judite. But this how tribes were established in the wilderness. All right? You had the east part where Moses, Aaron, and the priests were. You had the Kohathites here, the Gershonites here, and the Merarites here. So you had the east, the south, the west, and the north. All right? Yehuda, the dalet in Hebrew never drops. And now let's move on. So this letter that we keep on emphasizing on, this letter here, the dalet, brothers and sisters, where the arrow is, does not drop off in Hebrew. So being that is the case, how do you get Jew from Yahudi? Next slide. The Hebrew letter dalet never drops out. Therefore, when speaking of these people, it is imperative to make sure the right pronunciation is stated. The rules of the language are important. Definitions below from Webster's Unabridged Dictionary. Judah, son of Jacob and Leah. The tribe of Israel descended from Judah, an ancient kingdom in southern Palestine, occupied by the tribes of Judah and Benjamin and governed by the descendants of Solomon. Now, brothers and sisters, this definition here gets important because it says an ancient kingdom. Judah as an ancient kingdom in southern Palestine, occupied by the tribes of Judah and Benjamin, and governed by the descendants of Solomon. Why does this become important? Because the aspect here that you see in southern Palestine, the kingdom of Judah was also called the southern kingdom. All right? But within the southern kingdom of Judah did not only include the tribe of Judah. That becomes very, very important when we discuss in another aspect, the aspect of the 12 tribe chart. Jew, an adherent of Judaism, a descendant of the Hebrew people. Judaism, we're going to deal with that in a second. Judaism, the monotheistic religion of the Jewish people, tracing its origins to Abraham, having its spiritual and ethical principles embodied chiefly in the Bible and the Talmud, the cultural, spiritual, and social way of life of Jewish people. Judaize, to bring into conformity with Judaism, to adopt Jewish customs and beliefs. English explains the matter. Shalom. Let's look at this here. Jew, an adherent of Judaism. So would a Jew then by default in this definition here be different than one who descended from Judah, who was the son of Jacob and Leah? The tribe of Israel descended from Judah. Why is not Jew, brothers and sisters, a descendant from Judah? Yet they say Jew is a descendant of the Hebrew people. But as we already explained over here, brothers and sisters, with the aspect of the Kabiru were the Hebrews. But the Hebrews extended more than just the Israelites. So therefore, we're able to see that a Jew, if it is a descendant of the Hebrew people, can be the Kassite, Ishmaelites, Midian, Edomites, Moabite, Ammonite, because all of those different peoples I just mentioned were Hebrews. So if we're looking at the definition carefully, brothers and sisters, they're letting us know, brothers and sisters, that a Jew is different, brothers and sisters, than the tribes of Israel that descend from Judah. This is why later on in history, when you deal, certainly after the aspect of the Hasmonean line coming in, when you had many natural born Edomites claiming to be Jews, quote unquote, one had to sit there and be able to decipher who were the people of the southern kingdom of Judah and who were the people who latched on to what later on was Judah's kingdom. Now, let's look at this here, where it says Judaism, the monotheistic religion of the Jewish people, tracing its origins to Abraham, having its spiritual and ethical principles embodied chiefly in the Bible and the Talmud. The children of Israel did not uphold the Talmud. Now, one of the arguments given to me as a brother who is by default deemed quote unquote non-messianic, that is essentially Old Testament based, is that the Talmud, namely in part the Mishnah, was composed by descendants of David, said to be Judah Hanasi. Brothers and sisters, Manasseh, king of Judah, was a descendant of David. He was a witch and he was a murderer. Jehoiakim, king of Judah, was a descendant of David. And he, if he had his way, would have had the prophet Jeremiah put to death. So, being a descendant of David doesn't automatically mean one is supposed to just sit there and follow you blindly, like, oh, he's a descendant of David. So therefore, no, you're supposed to pursue righteousness. The Most High will let it be known who the children of David are. All right? Our job is to pursue righteousness, not Judaism, and not to be Judaized or so forth. To adopt Jewish customs and beliefs. To adopt Jewish customs and belief. Totally different beliefs, than an ancient kingdom in southern Palestine occupied by the tribes of Judah and Benjamin. You see from Judah to Judaize how drastically the definition changed? See how Jew doesn't even have the D in it? Let's go on to the next slide. The word Jews is nowhere in the Torah. We went over the fact that the D never drops in Hebrew. The point in this tedious task is to show the fact of the crookedness of the word Jew in its effect. In ancient records, we see Judah written as Auda, Yehudu, and Yehudu, etc. In the writings of those nations, we never see Judah mentioned without the D, meaning without the D sound. Some state that Jew is short for Judah. That is inaccurate since history shows that the tribes of Israel lived in the same land as Judah lived. Politically, they would be called Judeans, since they were outnumbered by those of the tribe of Judah. And this is why when you go into the book of First Kings 12:17, you read about the aspect of Israelites that were of the northern tribe that lived in the southern kingdom of Judah. All right. So every single human being that was in the southern kingdom of Judah or in the streets of Jerusalem was Judah or Levi or Simeon or Benjamin. You had Dan, you had Manasseh, you had Gad up in there. All right. Let's go on. Politically, they will be called Judeans since they were outnumbered by those of the tribe of Judah. Just the same, the Americans are the whites who colonized this North American continent. Yet blacks and others who are forced here or chose to come here are deemed Americans by those who are in other continents, since the whites outnumber those of other people in the North American continent. So because in North America, there's more white people, brothers and sisters, than say black people, right? We know black people didn't come up with the term America and American. It was a European, a white people thing to come up with that terminology. All right. But yet the black people that's in North America are deemed American because the black people are amongst a higher ratio of white people. So it takes the dominant in that regard as far as political terminologies. Since Jew is nowhere equivalent, pardon me, since Jew is of no Hebrew equivalent, it is necessary to understand Hebrew, the language, and the like. English explains the matter again. Since Jew is of no Hebrew equivalent, it is necessary to understand Hebrew, the language, and the history of the people. Since we are speaking English, let us understand some suffixes. Definitions below from Webster's Unabridged Dictionary. And pertaining to, belonging to. American, that is to say, one belonging to America, pertaining to America. Ite, a person who is a native or resident of a specific place. Israelite, Canaanite, Cushite. And here we see Ish, of a nationality of. Swedish, Finnish, having the qualities or character of. Childish, womanish. So if an adult is acting like a child, one would say that that person is being childish. If a man is acting like a woman, they say that man is womanish. So this is something we want to point out. So when they say Jewish, and we already see that ish is a suffix, brothers and sisters, it means of a nationality of the nationality of the Jews. That's what Jewish would be by definition there. But there is no nation called Jew in history. There was a tribe called Judah in Yehudu or Yehuda or Auda, or in layman terms, Judean, but there was no nation or tribe or group of people called a Jew ethnically, linguistically, socially, politically, geographically, even. There was no land called Jew. That terminology, as I wanted to emphasize, brothers and sisters, all right, of the crookedness of the word Jew and this effect, because it is a created terminology, they can sit there and try to apply it to anything they want to. But as already pointed out, the word Torah does not contain the word Jew. So Israel, the true sons of Israel, the two daughters of Judah and Dan and Manasseh and Ephraim, we need not just label ourselves, oh, I'm a Jew. No, you are from the 12 tribes of the house of Israel. All right, next slide. The only close way to say Jew in Hebrew would be youth. Youth is not a Hebrew word. If somebody said, I need youth, in ancient days, the hero would not think one is speaking of the tribe of Judah. Arthur Koestler, in his book, The 13th Tribe, stated that the origin of the modern Jews, whites, goes back to Togarmah, as stated by King Joseph, who was the king of the Khazars. Stephen Jacobs, in his book, Hebrew Heritage of Black Africa, stated that the white Jews are related to the Greeks, Armenians, and Russians, etc., and are not the children of Israel. Kohen Mikael, in his book, Israelites and Jews, The Significant Difference, stated that Hebrew is not of European origin. Yiddish, the dialect which arose out of the Jewish ghettos, is a composite of several languages, including German, Polish, and Hebrew. Now, I want to, in the description, put a video up describing that Hebrew that us teach as Old Testament based. When I say us, that we teach is not Yiddish. We're not speaking Yiddish. For instance, the Yiddish word for brother is bruder. Bruder is brother in Hebrew. You ain't never seen an Old Testament brother say bruder, brudery, Bruder Shelley, you ain't never heard no Old Testament brother or sister say that. Ask a Jewish person how to say brother in Yiddish. They're not going to tell you ak. You understand? They're not going to tell you that the first letter aleph is like that of an ox, and then you got the cat representing a fence and pictograph and some of the things that other people tend to present. You understand? Bruder is brother in Yiddish. Ach is brother in Hebrew. You have heard Old Testament brothers and sisters say the word ak or aki. So when we speak in Hebrew with the vowels, it's not Yiddish. All right? Let's look at this, brothers and sisters, for edification purposes, if we will. All right? At 250 mark. I just wanted that to have been stated, brothers and sisters, because of the aspect, brothers and sisters, of the European Jews. All right. Now, in regards to the Talmud, brothers and sisters, the reason why you find us as Israelites rejecting it isn't so much because we didn't want to sit there and agree or read anything about the sages. It's just the fact that Deuteronomy chapter 17, when it says a judge or priest that shall stand in those days. Now, the aspect of the Talmud is basically, correct me if I'm wrong, saying that there were people at the base of the mount when Moses was upon Mount Sinai who received a greater understanding than Moses himself had brought. And that they supposedly passed that down through the generations, and then later on it was codified in what we call the Mishnah today. Brothers and sisters, the problem with that explanation is the fact that the people at Mount Sinai in the book of Exodus were told to not go by the foot of the mount, and that bounds was put around there. So that's something we want to point out for edification purposes. Secondly, there's no Old Testament record that speaks of some supposed secret society, brothers and sisters, where the people just passed down the oral traditions, and then later on under Judah Hanasi and so forth, it was codified and so forth and so on. Furthermore, if we're taking the laws that we see, brothers and sisters, in Deuteronomy the 17th chapter, it says that the people are to go for judgment and they are to listen, brothers and sisters, to the priest or the judge that shall be Bayamim Hahem in those days. So in the days of Solomon, they may have came up with a different decision than in the days of Hezekiah. In the days of Hezekiah, they may have came up with a different decision than in the days of Jehoiachin. So whatever judge or priest made a decision concerning the matter in those days, it cannot apply from the ancient Talmudic writings into 2018. Only the Most High's laws transcend time. The teachings and the ideologies of man do not. So this is one of the other reasons why, brothers and sisters, we do not, as the Israelites, accept the Talmudic doctrine. All right? Be it with the Mishnah, or be it later on with the actual redacted aspect of the Gemara, we do not sit there and accept the Babylonian or the Palestinian Talmud. You understand? Anything codified after the year 70 AD as doctrine, not history, but as doctrine, is suspect in the house of Israel. You understand? And so what the Mishnah is different sages talking about certain things and based upon their own understanding of something. So Rabbi Eleazar would have said this, and then Rabbi such and such would have said something else. All right? But in the Torah, there is no, okay, Aaron, what do you think? Hur, what do you think? Hey, Caleb and Joshua, get your 2 cents. It's not like that in the Torah. Ko Amor Yah, thus saith the Most High. And that's it. So let's go on, brothers and sisters, to the next slide. Below is a list of foreign nations who speak of Israel or Judah in their records. Egypt, Amenhotep III of the 18th dynasty, or Merneptah of 19th dynasty, Israel. Assyria, Shalmaneser III, the Syrian king of the 9th century BCE, who spoke of Ahab Suliala. Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, son of Nabopolassar, of the 11th dynasty of Babylon, Yahudu. Persia, Cyrus II, aka Cyrus the Great, who conquered Babylon in the 6th century BCE, Yahud province. Rome, Tacitus the historian, who lived in the 1st century AD, Iudia, Judea, Iuda, Judea. Notice in all of that, whether you say, brothers and sisters, even as Judea, Yahud, Yehudu, none of that has Jew, because the D doesn't drop, even when you transliterate it into other languages. The D still stays there. Brothers and sisters, next slide. Origin of the word Jew is the Middle English word from the Old French Jew, G-I-U. Earlier, Jayu, Jui, from the Latin Iudeu, I-U-D-A-E-U. Somewhere it appears from the Latin to the Old French that the D dropped. This would be the forerunner of the word Jew. French, Latin, and English have a commonality. They are European. How can a European rendition of a people be taken to be legit of a people who came from Western Asia? The writings of the Babylonians and Assyrians, who spoke of Judah, wrote it as Yahudu, above definition from Webster's Unabridged Dictionary. So when I sat there and read about the part when it said the origin of the word Jew, that came from the Webster's Unabridged Dictionary for reference purposes. Yahudu sounds like Yahuda more than Jew sounds like Judah. The fundamental root letters of Judah are the Yod, the Hey, and the Dalet in Hebrew. Anytime one of the fundamental root letters is dropped, it is not speaking of the same people. The fundamental root letters. We want to emphasize that. All right? Now, why can I say that once one of the fundamental root letters is dropped, is not speaking of the same people as this? Let's go back, brothers and sisters, to this definition. All right? That we saw up here. Since Jew is of no Hebrew equivalent, it is necessary to understand Hebrew, the language and the history of the people. Let's go there. Let's go there. All right? The word Jews is nowhere in the Torah. We went over the fact that the D never drops in Hebrew. The point in this tedious task is to show the fact of the crookedness of the word Jew and its effect. Let's go there, brothers and sisters. Judah, son of Jacob and Leah. The tribe of Israel descended from Judah. And then we see Jew, an adherent of Judaism. So to be a son of Jacob or Leah, all right, to be as part in national or tribal origin to the ancient kingdom of southern Palestine occupied by the tribes of Judah and Benjamin. So you see that Benjamin included or was included in the southern kingdom of Judah. So would Benjamin be called Jew? Would Benjamin be part of Judaism? Will Benjamin be part of the people that's Judaized? So this we want to emphasize, because if a Jew, even in this dictionary, cannot even come close to saying Judah, it's just saying a descendant of the Hebrew people, which is broad because we already emphasized that Hebrew is the umbrella of many nations in the aspect of speaking in political terminologies. So that's why when we get back here, brothers and sisters, all right? Yahudu sounds like Yehuda much more than Jew sounds like Judah. Yahudu, Yahudu, Yehuda sounds similar in pronunciation, much more than Jew sounds like Judah. See, the whole dalet dropping out changes a whole lot. The fundamental root letters of Judah are the Yod, He, and Dalet in Hebrew. Anytime one of the fundamental root letters is dropped, it is not speaking of the same people. In concluding this subject, it is important to remember that nobody has all the answers. We are all learning. Certain things are set in stone, such as the laws of the Torah. Certain things are made up, such as bywords and doctrines that came after 70 AD. See, the point of me mentioning the aspect of the thing with 70 AD, brothers and sisters, is because I want to emphasize that none of those doctrines can promise what the Most High can. Be it the Quran, be it the New Testament, be it the Talmud, be it anything, cannot promise what the Most High can. And let's read, brothers and sisters, what I'm talking about. Let's go to Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter. And we're going to start in verse 1 for edification purposes. Deuteronomy chapter 28, and we're going to start, brothers and sisters, in the very first verse. Now, if you faithfully obey the Lord your God and are careful to follow all his commands I am giving you today, the Lord your God will put you far above all the nations of the earth. See, if Israel obeys the laws of the Most High, Israel will be above and not beneath. All these blessings will come and overtake you because you obey the Lord your God. You will be blessed in the city and blessed in the country. Your seed will be blessed in your land's produce, and the offspring of your flock, including the young of your herds, and the newborn of your flocks. Your basket and your kneading bowl will be blessed. You will be blessed when you come in and blessed when you go out. The Lord will cause the enemies who rise up against you to be defeated before you. They will march out against you from one direction and flee from you in 7 directions. The Lord will grant you a blessing on your storehouses and on everything you do. He will bless you in the land the Lord your God is giving you. The Lord will establish you as his holy people, as he swore unto you, if you obey the commands of the Lord your God and walk in his ways. Then all the peoples of the earth shall see that you are called by the name of Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, and they will be afraid of you. Brothers and sisters, in Orthodox Judaism, did you know that you're not supposed to say the holy name? Some say it as the Tetragrammaton, which is a Greek terminology, which literally means just 4 letters. Tetragrammaton is just the Greek word meaning 4 letters. Like tetra or tetras means 4, and Greek gramma means letter or word in Greek. Tetragrammaton simply means 4 letters. All right? So that's something we want to point out for edification purposes. Now, brothers and sisters, when you're looking at the aspect that it says you will be above only and not belief, and that your children will be blessed, your livestock will be blessed, your land will be blessed, your enemies will be defeated before you. None of the doctrines that came after 70 AD can promise that. This is why it's incumbent on why we, not trying to get sidetracked from the discussion of the black, quote unquote, black Israelite speaks upon the Jewish man. Let's go to Deuteronomy 28, brothers and sisters, verse 58. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 58, and it says this. If you are not careful to obey all the words of this law, which are written in this book, by fearing this glorious and awful name, the Lord your God, he will bring extraordinary plagues on you and on your descendants, severe and lasting plagues and terrible and chronic sicknesses. All the words of this law which are written in this book, says verse 58. This law, ha-Torah hazot, not a later law, not a new covenant, not a New Testament, not somebody out the house of Ishmael or Jokshan, whatever Muhammad came from, saying that he had a last revelation, some Injil, as he wanted to call it, or so forth and so on. No, brothers and sisters, none of them can promise what this book right here can promise by the Most High. The Quran cannot hold a candle to the promises of the Most High. Paul, the apostle, in his epistles cannot hold a candle to the promises of the Most High. The Shulchan Aruch, the Zohar, the Mishnah, with or without its Gemara, the book of Raziel, and so forth, none of them can hold a candle to the word of the Most High as far as being able to promise you that your children will be fruitful. See, the Most High knows what blessings we're looking for. That's how you can tell those books outside of the Tanakh are books of death, because it's not a lively book. It's not something that promotes life. It's not something that can sit there and tell you that you shall live your life well and live it abundantly and live it peacefully. Those books will sit there and have you to think that you'll be all right once you're dead. No. It says, I shall not die but live and declare the works of the Most High in the Old Testament. You understand? The only book now that Joshua, the son of Nun, had when he went into the land of Canaan was the Torah. So when you find Israelites even say, oh, they're Torah based, that's the same way you would have viewed Joshua, the son of Nun, the minister to the prophet Moses. You don't want to tangle with that in a problem. You don't want, as we went over in the Hebrew class, Ba'aya. You don't want a Ba'aya with that. Because just as the good things that we read of, so are deeply the bad things that we read of before. Cursed shall be the fruit of your body if you do not keep the commandments of the Most High. Cursed shall be your land. Cursed shall be your livestock. You shall be oppressed and crushed always. Strangers will eat up your substance. Brothers and sisters, the land of Israel is vacant of its true inhabitants. And I'm not saying there are not Israelites in other parts of the world, but the black man in the Western Hemisphere is landless. You got black people talking about we're part of Turtle Island with no connection to any language of such. So these are certain things we want to point out for edification purposes. All right, next slide. It is not hard to figure out the fact that the Israelites scattered east toward Babylon, south, west toward Egypt, and south toward Ethiopia. The Israelites did not scatter to Europe and become the Jewish people we see today. The Jewish people are Europeans who converted to a religion that the Khazars were taught by the Edomites. In Genesis 10, we see that Ashkenaz is from Japheth. The Khazars trace their ancestry not to Judah, but rather to Japheth, namely Japheth's son Togarmah. Upon study of the language, we see this considering the it issue. A conclusion on the matter. Shalom. We are able to see that the E at the end of those and other words shows possession. Yehudi, Dani, Kushi, Mitzri, so forth. Just the same. In Zechariah chapter 8, verse 23, we read in Hebrew, Yehudi, meaning Judite. The other tribes' names have none of their root letters missing. Concerning Ephraimite, we see Ephrati, and the root is para, meaning to be fruitful. The principal root letters in that word are not dropped either. The hey in para becomes a tau, as stating above to show the possession. There is no right way to say Jew in Hebrew. Next slide. The Hebrews who are in Israel and not from the US, what interesting things do they have to say? Let's look at this starting at 156. All right. Brothers and sisters, what you just heard is an interview that was aired on BET some years ago. And the guy named Ali Jida that you see right there on the left-hand side is saying that his people would have been there for thousands and thousands of years, and that they were there for thousands and thousands of years and would have been there, but they were taken to Africa and from Africa to the United States. So let's see what happened, brothers and sisters, because which we just saw right here was inside of the land of Israel, where a lady was interviewing the people in what they call Old Jerusalem, where the people are black, as you can see there. So this is something we want to point out. And what did he say? That his people were spread away, taken to Africa, and from Africa to the United States. So the whole world knows your story. You can't convince the black people in the East about us being the indigenous people of Turtle Island. The black people in the East ain't hearing that. They're claiming you, black man in the West. We're the only ones over here in the West that actually want to sit there and claim this cold, humid, snowy, rainy climate as ours. The climate is not even conducive. Why do you think every season our people always complaining? Do black people in the East complain about the weather where they are? No. Correct me if I'm wrong. Because they are used to it because that is their climate. Whereas us over here, oh, it's so hot, oh, it's so humid, oh, it's raining again, oh, it's so snowy. Because this is not home, brothers and sisters. Brooklyn is not home. Miami is not home. California is not home. Quote unquote, Turtle Island is not home. So this is something we want to point out for edification purposes. So as he stated in that video right there, all right, says the Hebrews who are in Hebrew, part of the Hebrews who are in Israel, and not from the U.S. What interesting things do they have to say? In case you missed it, let's go back. Like to hear it? Here it goes. Take it from here, meaning the land of Israel, where that interview that you see there on the left-hand side was being conducted on TV. Take it from here, Israel, to Africa, from Africa to the United States. And what happened when they got to the United States? Ta-da! Sold among their enemies, the true house of Israel. And who were these guys here? Who do these guys look like? Uh-oh. Let's see who they could perhaps be. Next slide. In the 17th century, Sephardic Jews went to Brazil in trade of blacks as slaves. Source, Slave Trade by Hugh Thomas. In the 17th century, Jewish people losing land in Brazil went to Barbados to trade blacks as slaves. In the 18th century, Aaron Lopez, a Jewish man, was involved in the slave trade. The Jewish people and what they were about. So looking at this right here, brothers and sisters, where the arrow is, look this up yourself. The people, brothers and sisters, Jewish people, the European Jewish people are not the true house of Israel. This is why they don't claim the story of the Israelites. They don't claim the harlots that Solomon spoke with. No, they're religious. Everything has to be the aura and the lights and the no. The scriptures say the day of the Most High is gloomy and dark. But these religious European Jews will talk about the aura and the light. What about Zedek as opposed to Or? What about Zedek meaning righteousness? Stop your Talmudic teaching of Maziza Bapé sucking little boys' penises and giving them herpes. Stop doing that, Jewish man. How about that? Stop teaching you can wear black and go to a neighborhood where nobody knows you and do evil according to your Judaic practices. Stop sending little Jewish boys after their bar mitzvah to black prostitutes so she can show him how to be a man. Stop doing that. See, they don't want to talk about tahor, meaning clean. So they come up with a word like kosher. This is kosher. Nowhere in the Torah does it speak about kosher. It talks about tahor, clean, and tameh, unclean. That was, and pointing to the pork, saying this was the pastrami, I like to have it. And the black guy who happens to be the worker says, sir, this is not pastrami, this is ham. Not turkey ham, we talking pig ham. I would like the pastrami right here. Because according to them, their rabbi can sit there and make something quote unquote kosher. So if he deems it such, it is such according to Judaic law. That's what we're talking about. Stop sitting up there and being the longest ones on the line at the welfare department. Meanwhile, you want to sit there and say it's black women being on welfare. Talk to the people working the welfare office and see if the people going for those benefits is not the Jewish people with their hypocritical selves. So this is something we want to talk about for edification purposes, brothers and sisters. All right? Next slide. Jews became Christians in religion and participated in the slave trade. Some helped the Danish enslaved trade, such as Joshua Henriquez. They were called conversos, such as the Jorge family in Spain. They actually used in legal aspect the asiento, which was used as by slave traders in the 16th to the 19th century. During the Jewish Inquisition, quote unquote, many Jewish people were becoming Christians and practicing in the slave trade. This is referred to as crypto-Judaism. Look up those names and see if you can find them in history as far as being Jewish people involved in the slave trade. Why do you think, and I'm not trying to keep on bashing certain things, why do you think the black people talking about we the natives of the Western Hemisphere, quote unquote, Turtle Island, correct me if I'm wrong, never seem to bang, quote unquote, bang against a Jewish man? Because if you study Jewish history, you run into them being involved in the slave trade, but you're teaching that the slave trade and the Atlantic slave trade coming west was a myth. That the Atlantic slave trade coming west is told in reverse. So you can't condemn the Jewish man who is truthfully guilty on participating in the slave trade that was going west. So this is something we want to point out for edification purposes. There goes your man Aaron Lopez that we spoke of earlier on the left-hand, pardon me, the right-hand side of this here. The Israelites and the Jew. You see the matter? Israel from Judah and Jew from Japheth. What you're looking at here is descendants of Japheth right here, the European. And what you're looking at here, namely like this one here and here, that is images of the people of Judah from the land of Lachish, which is in the land of Judah. The European Jew, as pointed out by Arthur Koestler, brothers and sisters, is not from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So as pointed out in my book, Deuteronomy 28, 15 to 68, brothers and sisters, you have it to where the Jewish man will deny Abraham's existence and write books. You understand? Talking about the Egyptian origin of the Jewish people. They will promote that Kemetic thing because they know the true house of Israel is waking up, and you can't have these niggas waking up. We got to give them something different. Let's sit there and talk about Kemet. They ain't got no idea how they're going to get Egypt from the Arabs, but let's just sit there and pump that because black people are already going to the land of Israel. And no offense, it's not only the community in Dimona. There are Israelites in Jordan. There are Israelites in Ashkelon. Black people born and raised in America. So this is something we want to point out for edification purposes. Japheth and Edom explained in part. Ezekiel chapter 36. Therefore prophesy and say, thus saith the Lord God, because they have made you the land, that is, they have made you desolate and swallowed you up on every side, that you might be a possession unto the rest of the nations, and you are taken up in the lips of talkers and the evil report of the people. Therefore, ye mountains of Yisrael, hear ye the word of Yah Elohim. Thus saith Yah Elohim, to the mountains, into the hills, into the streams, into the valleys, to the desolate wastes, into the cities that are forsaken, which are become a prey and a derision to the residue of the nations that are round about. Therefore, thus saith Yah Elohim, surely in the fire of my jealousy have I spoken against the residue of the nations, and against all Edom that have appointed my land unto themselves for a possession, with the joy of all their heart, with disdain of soul, they cast it out for a prey. Edom, according to the book of Ezekiel, appointed the land of Israel for themselves. You know, this is the same Ezekiel in the King James Version too. Read that when you get the chance, Ezekiel 36. And it talks about, as stated, Edom appointing the land of Israel for themselves. So who are the people that you see in the land of Israel today? Let's go to Genesis 9:27. God enlarged Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be their servant. Now let's show out the mistranslation. The Hebrew says this, brothers and sisters. Yath Elohim le Yefet, Vayishkon ba'ahale Shem, Wihi Kina'an ebed lamo. This word right here, Yath. Yath Elohim le Yefet. It does not mean God enlarged Japheth. Japhet or Yefet in Hebrew does not mean enlarge. The word Japhet comes from the root word patah in Hebrew, which means to deceive, not to enlarge. The Hebrew word for enlarge is hadel. The word gadal in Hebrew means to be large. The word to enlarge is hadel. The causative hifil is hadel of the qual gadal. That's Hebrew edification for you. You understand? We'll do a lesson like that one time inside the Hebrew class, all right, in the future. But I just want to point that out for edification purposes. So therefore, Elohim persuade or entice Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tent of Shem. It's not saying, brothers and sisters, about Japheth being enlarged and being in the tent of Shem, because of the sons of Noah, Japheth had the least amount of descendants, being 14, Ham having 30, and Shem having 26. 26, 30, and 14 gives you 70. The 70 nations that came out from the loins of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So this is something we want to point out for edification purposes. Next slide. Eli Wiesel, according to him, Jewish people in Auschwitz stated that God was found guilty of the Holocaust, which happened to the Jewish people. Theodore Herzl, according to him, Zionist is not to discriminate against one's religion or race. Refer to Zion and the national Jew idea by Macmillan. Theodore Herzl actually thought of Argentina as a place for Jewish people to migrate to. Theodore Herzl was also offered by Joseph Chamberlain land in what is now Kenya. So when, brothers and sisters, the Jewish people could not sit there and settle in Europe, you had it to where they was offered land in Kenya. The reason why, as Kohen Mikael pointed out, the Jewish people went to the land of Israel in part because the true Israelites were not there in great numbers. The land was left, as it says in Ezekiel, to the residue of the nations round about. Next slide. Let's go to 1 Kings 10:22. We're going to read in the scriptures and close out. We in the book of 1 Kings, chapter 10, verse 22. All right? And it reads as follows. For the king had ships of Tarshish at sea with Hiram's fleet. And once every 3 years, the ships of Tarshish would arrive bringing gold and silver, ivory, apes, and peacocks. So going to Tarshish by the orders of King Solomon. Later on, you will find out that Solomon dealt business with a guy named Hiram. Some people refer to him as Hiram Abif. Hiram Abif were the people of Canaan. He was from the people of Canaan, which later on, mixing in with the Israelites, formed the people called the Phoenicians, as we went over in a teaching called From Avaris to Alabama on this particular channel. Look that up on this particular channel. from Avaris to Alabama or from Egypt to America. All right? Evidence of the Hebrews. That's the name of it on this channel. So you had Israelite colonies set up in Spain since the aspect, brothers and sisters, of Solomon. Because when you dealt in trade, you're going to have businessmen set over there to make sure you can get messages back and forth. All the Israelites that Solomon sent out were not all coming back to the land of Jerusalem. So this is something we want to point out for edification purposes. You want to know why, in part, you got dark Vietnamese? Because when the black man was in Vietnam, some of them stayed there and had babies with the Vietnamese women. So it's not far-fetched what we're talking about. Let's go, if you will, brothers and sisters, to the book of Isaiah chapter 11, if we will. We in the scriptures in Isaiah chapter 11, verse 11, and we're going to close out. All right? And it says the following. On that day, the Lord will extend his hand the second time to recover the remnant of his people that remain from Assyria, Egypt, Pathros, Cush, Elam, Shinar, Hamath, and the coast of the sea. He will set up a banner for the nations and gather the dispersed of Israel. He will collect in the scattered of Judah from the four corners of the earth. So Israel and Judah was scattered to the four corners of the earth. It wasn't just the aspect of just Judah being scattered and Israel wasn't. No, such is not the case. All right? Go to Jeremiah chapter 44. Jeremiah in the scriptures, chapter 44. We're going to start, brothers and sisters, in verse 1. All right? So we can gain something for edification purposes. Jeremiah 44 and verse 1 says the following. This is the word that came to Jeremiah for all the Jews, the Yehudim, the Judites, living in the land of Egypt, at Migdol, Tapanhes, Memphis, and in the land of Pathros. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel. Ye have seen all the evil that I have brought upon Jerusalem and all Judah's cities. Look, behold, they are in ruin today without an inhabitant in them. So therefore, brothers and sisters, the land of Israel, as stated in Leviticus, is repaying its Sabbaths. The land is desolate. The Most High said concerning Jerusalem that he would take it and flip it upside down like one does a dish. All right? So this is something we want to point out for edification purposes. 2 Maccabees chapter 1 is where Israelites are mentioned being in Egypt. Now let's look at this right here, brothers and sisters. This is Egypt that Jeremiah and 2 Maccabees is talking about. So not far-fetched that they migrated here and they kept on going in migration. That's something, brothers and sisters, we want to stay bringing out for edification purposes. Next slide. Well, that ends that. Giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the creator and the maker of heaven and earth. The picture that you see right there, brothers and sisters, on the right-hand side comes from the book Hebrewisms of West Africa. I can be reached at my email, kashubhut@gmail.com, KASHUBHUT@gmail.com. Stay tuned for more lessons. Shalom. Most High bless all of us.